in a quiet corner of the galaxy, far away from Earth and its bustling cities, there was a small human colony called Elysium 7. This place wasn't fancy or glamorous. It was just a patch of land carved out of rocky terrain under endless skies. The settlers had come here centuries ago, looking for a fresh start. Life wasn't easy on Elysium 7. The soil was tough to farm, the weather unpredictable, and resources scarce. But despite all that, they made it work. They built homes, grew crops, and even managed to find moments of joy in their hard lives. For years, everything went smoothly. The colony thrived quietly, untouched by the chaos of the wider universe. People went about their days, working together, raising families, and dreaming of better tomorrows. No one expected anything unusual to happen. After all, Elysium 7 was so remote that most starships didn't even bother plotting a course near it. It felt like they were living at the edge of the cosmos, forgotten by time itself. But then, one fateful night, everything changed. It started with a strange sound, a faint, crackling noise coming through the colony's old communications array. At first, no one paid much attention. Space was full of random signals, after all. Cosmic radiation, stray transmissions, and other harmless phenomena often created odd noises. But this was different. This signal wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone or something was trying to send a message. The person who noticed it first was a scientist named Dr. Elena Voss. She worked as the colony's lead xenolinguist, which meant her job was to study alien languages and try to understand them. Most days, she spent hours poring over dusty records and ancient texts, searching for clues about civilizations long gone. Her work rarely brought excitement, but tonight was different. When she heard the signal, her heart skipped a beat. Something about it felt urgent. Elena sat down at her desk, headphones clamped tightly over her ears, and began decoding the transmission. It wasn't easy. The signal was weak, distorted by distance and interference. Bits and pieces came through clearly, while others remained garbled. Slowly, though, words started forming. Words in an ancient language, one that hadn't been spoken in thousands of years. "Help us," the voice whispered hoarsely. "They come unstoppable." Elena froze. Her hands trembled as she wrote down what she could decipher. There was desperation in those words, a raw plea for survival. Whoever had sent this message was in grave danger. But before she could figure out more, another transmission cut across the first. This one was louder, harsher, and unmistakably alien. A guttural voice growled a single warning. "The Deathworlders are coming." Elena's blood ran cold. She knew the term. Everyone did. Legends of the Deathworlders had been passed down through generations, told around campfires and whispered in classrooms. They were supposed to be myths, stories meant to scare children into behaving. But now, hearing that name again, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this was real. Very, very real. She rushed to the colony's control center where monitors displayed data streaming in from space. Sure enough, something massive was approaching. Hundreds of ships, maybe even thousands, were visible on radar, moving at speeds that defied logic. Their formation was precise, almost mechanical, and they showed no signs of slowing down. Worse still, none of them responded to attempts to communicate. Whoever or whatever they weren't interested in talking. Panic spread quickly through the colony. News of the incoming fleet reached every household within minutes. Parents hugged their children tighter. Friends gathered in groups, whispering theories and fears. Some suggested evacuating, but where would they go? Elysium 7 was too isolated for quick escapes. Others talked about fighting back, but how could a handful of farmers and engineers stand against such overwhelming odds? Amidst the chaos, Elena kept working. She refused to give up. If she could decode more of the SOS signal, maybe she'd find answers. Maybe she'd learn why these ships were heading straight for them. So she returned to her lab, determined to piece together the puzzle. Hours turned into days, and the mystery only deepened. The signal contained fragments of information, not just the desperate cry for help, but also references to an ancient civilization. Elena recognized the markers. They belonged to a species thought extinct, wiped out eons ago during some forgotten galactic conflict. Why would their distress call suddenly reappear now? And why had it led the Deathworlders here? As the fleet drew closer, fear gripped the colony like never before. Lights burned late into the night as people fortified their homes and prepared for the worst. Children cried themselves to sleep, sensing the tension in the air. Even the animals seemed restless, pacing nervously in their pens. Yet amidst the dread, there was also determination. The colonists might have been scared, but they weren't ready to give up without a fight. Engineers worked tirelessly to build defenses using whatever materials they could scavenge. Old mining equipment became makeshift cannons. Sheets of metal were welded together to form barricades. Every able-bodied person pitched in, knowing their survival depended on teamwork. At the same time, Elena continued her research. She dug deeper into the archives stored aboard the colony ship that had originally brought humanity to Elysium 7. Buried among the files were accounts of the Deathworlder stories that painted a terrifying picture. These creatures weren't just warriors. They were apex predators, bred on a planet so deadly that only the strongest survived. Their bodies were part organic, part machine, designed for maximum efficiency in combat. Entire armies had fallen before them in battles long past, but there was something else too, something unexpected. As Elena sifted through the records, she stumbled upon mentions of betrayal. Centuries ago, the Deathworlders had been lured into traps using fake distress signals like the one haunting Elysium 7. Entire fleets had vanished without a trace after answering such calls. Was this happening again? Had someone deliberately activated the beacon to summon the Deathworlders here? If that was true, then the colonists weren't victims. They were bait. The realization hit Elena like a punch to the gut. She shared her findings with the colony's leaders, urging them to prepare for the possibility that they weren't dealing with mindless invaders, but rather a calculated strike. Whether the Deathworlders believed humanity responsible for the betrayal or saw them as pawns didn't matter. What mattered was surviving long enough to prove their innocence. And so, as the shadow of the Deathworlder fleet loomed ever larger, the people of Elysium 7 braced themselves for the battle of their lives. They didn't know if they'd win, or even if winning was possible, but they vowed to face whatever came next with courage and unity. Little did they know, the arrival of the Deathworlders would bring not only destruction, but also revelations that would change their understanding of the universe forever. As the Deathworlder fleet drew closer, the colonists of Elysium 7 scrambled to make sense of the situation. The SOS signal had brought them here, but what did it mean? And why now, after centuries of silence? For Dr. Elena Voss, the answers lay buried in history. Ancient records that might hold the key to understanding who the Deathworlders truly were, and why they had been summoned. Elena spent countless hours poring over dusty files and cracking open encrypted archives stored aboard the colony ship that had brought humanity to Elysium 7. These archives weren't just technical manuals or engineering blueprints. They contained fragments of galactic history, stories passed down from generation to generation. As she dug deeper, a chilling picture began to emerge. The Deathworlders, as legend described, weren't ordinary beings. They hailed from a planet called Zetherion, a place so hostile that only the strongest lifeforms could survive. Every creature on Zetherion evolved into an apex predator, capable of hunting, fighting, and adapting to survive in brutal conditions. Over millennia, the Deathworlders rose above all others, becoming not just hunters but conquerors. Their bodies fused with technology, blending flesh and metal into biomechanical perfection. They became living weapons, feared across the stars. But there was more to their story than strength and dominance. Hidden within the archives were accounts of betrayal, dark secrets that painted the Deathworlders not as merciless invaders, but as victims of treachery. According to these records, long ago, another race known as the Zorathians had once allied with the Deathworlders. The Zorathians were cunning strategists, masters of deception and manipulation. Together, the two races formed a powerful coalition, conquering planets and expanding their influence across the galaxy. However, the alliance didn't last. The Zorathians grew wary of the Deathworlders' growing power and saw them as a threat. Rather than face them head-on, they devised a plan to eliminate their former allies quietly. Using fake distress signals like the one that had reached Elysium 7, they lured entire Deathworlder fleets into traps. Once the unsuspecting warriors arrived, they were ambushed and destroyed, their ships reduced to floating debris in the void of space. Elena couldn't believe what she was reading. The Zorathians had framed other species for these attacks, making it look like rival civilizations were responsible. This way, they avoided suspicion while sowing chaos among the stars. Entire fleets disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only rumors and fear. The Deathworlders, devastated by the losses, eventually retreated from the galactic stage, retreating back to their homeworld of Zetherian. Many assumed they had gone extinct, fading into myth like so many other ancient races. But now, centuries later, they were back and heading straight for Elysium-7. The realization hit Elena hard. If the Deathworlders believed humanity was behind the betrayal, then the colonists weren't just facing an invasion, they were facing annihilation. There would be no mercy, no negotiation, only vengeance. Meanwhile, outside her lab, the colony prepared for war. Engineers worked around the clock, turning scraps of metal and old machinery into crude defenses. Mining drills were repurposed into cannons, and sheets of reinforced steel were welded together to form barricades. Every able-bodied person pitched in, whether it was building fortifications, organizing supplies, or training civilians in basic combat tactics. At the heart of the effort was the colony's leader, a grizzled veteran who had seen his fair share of hardship. He wasn't a soldier by trade, he'd been a farmer before stepping up to guide the settlement, but he carried himself with quiet authority. His voice steadied nerves when panic threatened to take hold, and his calm demeanor inspired confidence even in the darkest moments. He knew their chances were slim. The Deathworlders' fleet dwarfed anything humanity had ever faced. Their ships bristled with weapons far beyond anything the colonists could imagine, let alone counter. Yet, he refused to give up hope. "We've survived worse," he told. A people gathered in the town square. "This isn't just about us, it's about proving we're worth saving. We'll fight with everything we've got." His words rallied the colonists, giving them a renewed sense of purpose. Families huddled together, sharing meals and comforting each other. Children played games to distract themselves from the looming threat, while adults whispered prayers under their breath. Despite the fear gnawing at their hearts, there was also a stubborn determination to stand their ground. Back in her lab, Elena felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. She knew the colonists' makeshift defenses wouldn't be enough. If they wanted any chance of survival, they needed to uncover the truth behind the SOS signal and prove their innocence to the Deathworlders. But time was running out. The fleet was getting closer with each passing hour, its shadow stretching across the horizon like an omen. Desperate for answers, Elena turned her attention to the second part of the transmission, the guttural warning. Spoken in an alien tongue. It had mentioned the Deathworlders, but it hadn't come from them. Whoever sent it had known they were coming. Could it have been the Zorothians? Were they still out there, watching and waiting? She cross-referenced the language against known dialects, searching for matches. After hours of painstaking work, she found something, a fragment of text, written in a script eerily similar to the one used in the warning. It came from a classified file buried deep within the archives. The document spoke of the Zorothians' final days, detailing how they had vanished after their betrayal of the Deathworlders. Some believed they had fled to the edges of the galaxy, hiding in secret enclaves. Others claimed they had been wiped out entirely, victims of their own schemes. Elena stared at the screen, her mind racing. If the Zorothians were still alive, then they might have activated the SOS signal deliberately. Perhaps they had chosen Elysian 7 as bait, knowing the Deathworlders would respond. Framing humanity for their crimes would serve two purposes. It would draw the Deathworlders into conflict with another species, keeping them distracted, and it would allow the Zorothians to remain hidden in the shadows. It was a horrifying thought, but it made sense. The colonists weren't the target. They were collateral damage in a game, much bigger than themselves. Elena shared her findings with the colony's leaders, explaining the stakes in clear terms. If the Deathworlders attacked without hearing their side of the story, everyone on Elysian 7 would die. But if they could somehow communicate with them, if they could show them evidence of the Zorothians' betrayal, they might stand a chance. The challenge was figuring out how to reach the Deathworlders. Their ships showed no signs of responding to hails, and their approach was relentless. Still, Elena clung to the hope that they weren't mindless killers. Legends described them as ruthless, yes, but also honorable. If they learned the truth, perhaps they would spare the colony. With this fragile hope in mind, the colonists prepared for the arrival of the fleet. Barricades lined the streets, weapons stood ready, and lookout posts scanned the skies. Everyone knew the odds were against them, but they refused to surrender without a fight. They had built their lives on Elysium 7, carving out a future from barren soil and endless skies. Now, they would defend it with every ounce of strength they had got as the first glimmers of the Deathworlder ships appeared on the horizon. Casting long shadows over the colony, Helena took a deep breath. She didn't know what the next few hours would bring, but she vowed to do everything in her power to protect her people. Whatever happened, the story of Elysian 7 was far from over, and neither was the mystery of the SOS signal that had summoned the unstoppable Deathworlder fleet. The moment the Deathworlder fleet arrived, it felt like time itself froze. The massive ships descended from the sky, blotting out the sun and casting Elysium 7 into an eerie shadow. They weren't sleek or elegant like the starships humanity had seen in old vids. They were hulking, monstrous things, bristling with weapons that glowed faintly, as if charged with energy ready to unleash destruction at a moment's notice. Each vessel loomed over the colony like a predator circling its prey. For a while, nothing happened. No lasers fired, no bombs dropped, no ground troops stormed the barricades. Instead, the ships just hovered there, silent and ominous. The colonists watched from behind their makeshift defenses, gripping rifles and tools turned into crude weapons. Every breath was shallow, every heartbeat thunderous. No one knew what to expect next. Then came movement. Smaller ships detached from the larger ones, descending toward the surface. These weren't attack craft. They looked more like shuttles, designed for transport rather than combat. But that didn't ease anyone's nerves. When the doors of those shuttles opened, towering figures stepped out. Deathworlders. They were unlike anything the colonists had ever seen. Their bodies were part flesh, part machine, covered in armor etched with strange runes that pulsed faintly with light. Some had claws instead of hands. Others carried weapons fused directly to their limbs. Their eyes glowed red, scanning everything around them with cold precision. They moved with unnerving grace, each step deliberate, calculated, as though they were assessing every detail before acting. Despite their fearsome appearance, the Deathworlders didn't attack right away. Instead, they sent emissaries 3. Of them, clad in ornate armor that shimmered even in the dim light. One of them stood taller than the rest, his presence commanding. He wore a helmet adorned with spikes, but when he removed it, the colonists saw his face. It was scarred, weathered by countless battles, yet there was something almost noble about him. His expression wasn't filled with rage or malice, it was calm, focused, and unreadable. The leader of the colony stepped forward cautiously, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. Behind him, Elena carried a translator device she'd hastily assembled using scraps from the colony's tech stores. Her hands trembled as she activated it, praying it would work. This was their only chance. Through the device, communication began. The tall Deathworlder spoke first, his voice deep and guttural, sending chills down everyone's spines. "You summoned us," he said, his tone neither angry nor accusatory, just matter of fact. "Why?" Elena swallowed hard, stepping forward to answer. "We didn't summon you," she replied, her voice steady despite the knot of fear in her stomach. "We found an SOS signal, a distress call, and decoded parts of it. We thought someone needed help. We had no idea it would lead you here." The Deathworlder tilted his head slightly, studying her. "And yet, here we are. Our kind does not respond lightly to such calls. Someone has played us for fools once again." His words hung heavy in the air. Elena realized then that these beings weren't just here for revenge. They were here because they'd been betrayed before, countless times. And now they suspected humanity was part of that betrayal. She took a deep breath and continued, choosing her words carefully. "We're not your enemy. We're settlers trying to survive on this planet. We didn't know about your history, about the Zorathians or the traps they set for you. But I've uncovered evidence records that prove someone else framed you. Framed all of us." The Deathworlder's glowing eyes narrowed. "Evidence? Show me." Elena hesitated. She didn't have physical proof with her, only theories based on the archives, but she knew she had to convince him somehow. "Give us a chance," she pleaded. "Let us prove our innocence. If we don't, then do what you must. But please, hear us out." A tense silence followed. The other 2 emissaries exchanged low growls, their metallic components clicking softly as they shifted positions. Finally, the leader nodded. "Very well. You will come with us. Bring your evidence. If you lie, every soul on this planet dies." It wasn't exactly permission, but it was enough. The colonists breathed a collective sigh of relief, though none dared celebrate just yet. Elena quickly gathered what she could, the data files, notes, and recordings she'd compiled, and prepared to board one of the shuttles. A few volunteers joined her, including the colony's leader, who refused to let her go alone. As they climbed aboard the shuttle, Elena couldn't help but marvel at the technology surrounding them. Everything was advanced beyond anything humanity had achieved, yet it felt alive. Panels rippled like liquid metal, adapting to touch. Lights pulsed rhythmically, mimicking a heartbeat. Even the air inside smelled different, metallic but not unpleasant. The journey to the flagship was short but surreal. Through the windows, they caught glimpses of the vast fleet, stretching farther than the eye could see. It was overwhelming, a reminder of how small and insignificant Elysium 7 truly was in the grand scheme of things. Yet, amidst the awe, there was also resolve. They hadn't given up yet, and they wouldn't not until every option had been exhausted. When they reached the flagship, they were escorted to a massive chamber that served as the command center. Screens displaying star charts and tactical readouts lined the walls, while Deathworlder warriors stood guard, their weapons primed. At the center of the room was a raised platform where the leader awaited them. He gestured for Elena to approach. She did so, clutching her data files tightly. With trembling fingers, she connected her device to one of the ship's consoles, projecting the information onto a large screen. The Deathworlder studied it intently, his glowing eyes scanning the text and images. "These records speak of betrayal," he said finally, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Of false signals luring my people to their deaths. Of cowards hiding behind lies." "Yes," Elena confirmed. "The Zorathians did this. They framed others to cover their tracks. We're not responsible. We're victims too." The leader fell silent, lost in thought. Around them, the hum of machinery filled the air, punctuated by the occasional clink of biomechanical parts adjusting. For a moment, it seemed like he might dismiss her claims entirely. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke. "I believe you," he said. "Simply, not because I trust you, but because the truth resonates. My people have long suspected treachery, but we lacked proof. Now, thanks to you, we have direction." Relief washed over Elena, but it was short-lived. The leader wasn't finished. "However," he continued, "this changes nothing for your colony. While you may not be guilty, you are still pawns in a game older than your species. The question remains, why were you chosen?" Elena hesitated. She didn't have an answer, not fully. But she suspected the worst. "Maybe whoever activated the signal wanted to draw you out," she ventured, "to use us as bait. Maybe they're still watching, waiting to see what happens next." The leader nodded slowly. "Then we must act swiftly. If the Zorathians think they can manipulate us again, they are mistaken. Humanity may live another day, but our hunt is far from over." With that, he dismissed them, ordering his crew to prepare for departure. As Elena and her companions returned to the surface, they felt a mix of emotions: relief that they'd survived, hope that the Deathworlders might spare them, and dread at the thought of what came next. Back on Elysium 7, the colonists waited, anxiously for news. When Elena explained what had transpired, a murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd. Had they really convinced the Deathworlders to stand down? Or was this just a temporary reprieve? Regardless, the immediate danger seemed to have passed. The massive ships began lifting off, disappearing into the sky as suddenly as they'd arrived. For the first time in days, sunlight broke through the clouds, bathing the colony in warmth. But Elena knew better than to relax completely. The Deathworlders were gone, but the mystery remained unsolved. Who had activated the SOS signal? Where were the Zorathians now? And most importantly, what role did humanity play in all of this? As night fell over Elysium 7, Elena stared up at the stars, wondering if the answers lay somewhere out there, hidden among the ruins of ancient civilizations. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: the story of the unstoppable Deathworlder fleet and the signal that summoned them was far from over. The Deathworlder fleet had left, vanishing into the stars as quickly as it had arrived. For the colonists of Elysium 7, the relief was overwhelming. They hugged their families, cried tears of joy, and celebrated what felt like a second chance at life. But amidst the celebrations, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were only at the beginning of something much bigger. The Deathworlders might have believed her for now, but the mystery of the SOS signal remained unsolved. Someone had activated it deliberately, framing humanity for crimes they didn't commit. And if the Zorathians were still out there, watching and waiting, then Elysium 7 wasn't safe yet. Elena spent hours poring over the data she'd collected, trying to piece together clues. She knew the answers wouldn't come easily, but one thing stood out: the coordinates embedded in the SOS signal. It wasn't just random noise. It pointed to a specific location deep within a nearby nebula. Ancient archives referred to this place as the Graveyard of Stars. a region shrouded in myths and warnings. Some said it was cursed. Others claimed it held relics from civilizations long gone. Whatever it was, Elena was certain it held the key to unraveling the conspiracy. She approached the colony's leader with her findings. "We need to go there," she said firmly. "If we can find proof of who activated the signal, we can clear our names once and for all." The leader hesitated. "You're talking about risking lives again? We barely survived last time. What makes you think we'll fare any better?" "I know it's dangerous," Elena admitted, "but staying here isn't an option either. The Deathworlders may have left, but they won't forget us. If we don't prove our innocence, they'll come back, and next time, they won't hesitate to destroy us." Her argument struck a chord. After a tense discussion, the colony agreed to send a small team into the nebula. Volunteers stepped forward, bravely, knowing the odds were against them, but unwilling to let fear dictate their fate. Together, they prepared a ship and old mining vessel retrofitted with whatever weapons and defenses they could cobble together. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. As the team boarded the ship, Elena felt a mix of emotions: determination, fear, and a flicker of hope. They set course for the nebula, leaving behind the fragile safety of Elysium 7. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and perhaps the truth. The journey through the nebula was anything but smooth. Colossal clouds of gas swirled around them, glowing faintly in shades of purple and green. Lightning crackled in the distance, illuminating jagged asteroids that drifted like ghostly sentinels. The ship's instruments malfunctioned constantly, overwhelmed by electromagnetic interference. Every beep and whir seemed to echo louder than usual, filling the cabin with tension. Then came the first real challenge: rogue asteroids. Massive chunks of rock tumbled through space, their trajectories unpredictable. One wrong move, and the ship would be crushed. The pilot, a quiet man who rarely spoke, but had nerves of steel, maneuvered carefully, dodging debris with precision. Sweat dripped down his brow as he focused on keeping them alive. Just when they thought they were in the clear, alarms blared. A swarm of smaller rocks was hurtling toward them, too fast to avoid. Everyone braced for impact, but Elena shouted, "Fire the cannons!" The makeshift guns roared to life, blasting away the incoming projectiles. Shards of rock exploded into harmless dust, clearing a path forward. Cheers erupted briefly before silence returned, each member of the crew keenly aware that survival depended on staying alert. Deeper into the nebula, they encountered something even stranger: automated defenses. Ancient turrets mounted on drifting platforms suddenly sprang to life, targeting their ship with relentless accuracy. Lasers streaked past, narrowly missing their hull. Panic threatened to take hold, but Elena reminded herself why they were here. "Stay calm," she urged. "They're programmed, not intelligent. Find the control source." Working together, the team managed to locate the central hub powering the defenses. With careful aim, they disabled it, silencing the turrets. Exhausted but triumphant, they pressed onward, driven by the knowledge that every obstacle brought them closer to the truth. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached their destination, a derelict structure floating silently in the moon. Void. Its design was unmistakably alien, sleek yet ominous, covered in layers of cosmic dust. This was no ordinary ruin. It was a Zorathian outpost, untouched for millennia. Docking was tricky, but they managed to secure the ship and step onto the crumbling platform. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of decay. Lights flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Strange symbols glowed faintly, pulsing as though alive. Each step echoed loudly, a reminder of how fragile their presence was. In this forgotten place, Elena led the way, her heart pounding as she explored room after room. She found remnants of advanced technology devices, far beyond human understanding, as well as records etched into crystal tablets. These weren't just logs. They were detailed accounts of the Zarathian schemes, including their betrayal of the Deathworlders. There were recordings, too, showing their leaders plotting and laughing as they lured unsuspecting fleets to their doom. But the most shocking discovery came in a hidden chamber deep within the outpost. On a pedestal sat a device unlike anything they'd ever seen. It hummed softly, its surface etched with runes identical to those on the SOS signal. Elena realized instantly what it was: the beacon. Someone or something had reactivated it recently, drawing the Deathworlders to Elysium 7. Before she could examine it further, the ground trembled violently. The team froze, exchanging worried glances. Then, from the shadows, emerged figures clad in dark armor. They weren't Deathworlders. They were Zarathians, alive, watching. One of them stepped forward, his voice cold and mechanical. "You should not have come here." Elena's mind raced. How had they survived? Why had they framed humanity? And what did they plan to do now? With no time to waste, Elena made a bold decision. Holding up the evidence they'd gathered, she confronted the Zarathians. "We know what you've done," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "Your games are over. The Deathworlders know the truth, and so will everyone else." For a moment, the Zarathian leader hesitated. Then, without warning, chaos erupted. The battle that followed was fierce and chaotic. The Zarathians attacked with ruthless efficiency, their weapons cutting through the air like knives. The team fought back, using everything they had: improvised tools, stolen tech, sheer determination. Despite being outnumbered, they refused to give up. In the end, it was Elena who turned the tide. Using the beacon itself, she overloaded its systems, creating a massive surge that disrupted the Zarathians' gear. Blinded and disoriented, they retreated into the shadows, disappearing as mysteriously as they had appeared. Breathing heavily, the team regrouped. Around them, the outpost began collapsing, its ancient foundations unable to withstand the strain. They scrambled back to their ship, narrowly escaping as the structure imploded behind them. As they sped away from the nebula, Helena clutched the evidence tightly. They had done it. They had uncovered the truth. Now it was time to share it with the galaxy. Little did they know, their actions would spark a chain reaction, forcing alliances to shift and secrets to unravel. The story of humanity's encounter with the unstoppable Deathworlder fleet was far from over, but for the first time, they held the upper hand. The journey back to Elysium 7 felt both endless and fleeting. For the team aboard the mining vessel, every moment was a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. They had faced death in the heart of the nebula, fought off ancient enemies, and uncovered secrets buried for millennia. Now, as they approached their home planet, they carried with them not just evidence, but hope, a fragile, yet powerful thing that could change everything. When the ship touched down on Elysium 7, the colony erupted in cheers. People rushed to greet them, hugging loved ones and strangers alike. The atmosphere buzzed with relief and excitement. But Elena didn't waste any time celebrating. She knew the clock was ticking. If the Deathworlders were still out there, and she had no doubt they were, then humanity needed to act fast. Every second counted. She gathered the colony's leaders and shared what they'd found: proof of the Zarathians' betrayal, recordings of their schemes, and evidence that the SOS signal had been deliberately reactivated. "This isn't just about us anymore," she said, her voice firm despite her fatigue. "It's about justice for them, for us, and for anyone else who's been caught in this web of lies." Together, they devised a plan. Using the old communications array, they broadcast the evidence across every frequency they could access. It wasn't just a message, it was a declaration. Humanity wasn't guilty. The Zorathians were. And if anyone doubted it, they invited them to see the truth for themselves. Days passed without word. The colonists waited anxiously, scanning the skies for any sign of movement. Some feared the worst, that the Deathworlders would return, enraged by the revelation. Others clung to hope, believing that even such a fearsome race might value truth. Over Vengeance. Then, one evening, the horizon lit up once more. Massive ships descended from the stars, blotting out the sun just as they had before. Panic rippled through the colony, but this time something felt different. The ships didn't unleash weapons or deploy ground forces. Instead, they hovered silently, watching. A single shuttle broke away from the fleet, landing gently near the colony's perimeter. Out stepped the leader of the Deathworlders, the same towering figure Elena had met aboard his flagship. He removed his helmet, revealing his scarred face, and strode toward the gathered crowd. His glowing red eyes scanned the humans, lingering briefly on Elena before he spoke. "You have done well," he rumbled, his deep voice carrying an unexpected note of respect. "Few would dare challenge the shadows we have chased for so long. Fewer still would succeed." Elena stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Does this mean you believe us?" He nodded slowly. "Your actions speak louder than words. You risked your lives to uncover the truth, not for yourselves, but for others. That takes courage. Courage is something my people understand." His words brought a wave of relief, but Elena pressed further. "What happens now? Will you leave us alone?" The leader paused, considering her question. "We will not harm you. Your innocence has been proven. But know this, the Zorathians are cunning. They may have fled today, but they will not stop. Scheming, their betrayal runs deeper than even you realize. If left unchecked, they will bring ruin upon countless worlds, including yours." Elena exchanged a glance with the colony's leader. Both understood the implications. This wasn't the end of the fight, it was the beginning of a new chapter. "What do you suggest?" she asked. The leader gestured to his fleet. "Join us. Together, we can root out the Zorathians and ensure they never threaten another species. Again, your bravery has earned our trust. Trust must be repaid." The offer stunned everyone. The idea of allying with the Deathworlders, a race once feared as unstoppable predators, was almost unthinkable. Yet, as Elena looked around at the faces of her fellow colonists, she saw determination replacing fear. These people had survived against impossible odds. They weren't about to back down now. After a brief discussion, the colony agreed. They would work alongside the Deathworlders, sharing knowledge and resources to track down the Zorathians. In return, the Deathworlders promised protection, not just for Elysian 7, but for all human colonies scattered across the galaxy. In the weeks that followed, life on Elysian 7 began to transform. Engineers worked side by side with biomechanical warriors, learning from each other and combining technologies. Farmers taught the Deathworlders about sustainable living, while their visitors introduced advanced techniques for resource management. Slowly but surely, two vastly different cultures started to merge, building a partnership based on mutual respect. Elena became a key figure in this alliance, acting as a bridge between humans and Deathworlders. She traveled frequently aboard their ships, helping decode ancient texts and mapping potential locations where the Zorathians might hide. Her efforts earned her admiration from both sides, though she remained humble. "I'm just doing what needs to be done," she often said when praised. "We're stronger together." Meanwhile, the hunt for the Zorathians intensified. Clues led them to forgotten corners of the galaxy, abandoned outposts, hidden fortresses, and even planets cloaked in illusion. Each discovery brought them closer to dismantling the shadowy network that had manipulated civilizations for centuries. Along the way, alliances grew stronger, and trust deepened. One day, during a mission to infiltrate a heavily guarded Zorithian base, Elena found herself standing face to face with their leader, the same figure who had confronted her in the nebula. This time, however, he wasn't alone. Surrounding him were dozens of armed guards, their weapons trained on the intruders. "You've made a grave mistake coming here," the Zorithian sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think exposing us will stop us? We are eternal. We adapt. We survive." Elena met his gaze without flinching. "Maybe, but you won't survive this." With a nod from the Deathworlder commander, the attack began. What followed was a fierce battle, fought not just with weapons, but with strategy and teamwork. Humans and Deathworlders moved as one, anticipating each other's moves and covering weaknesses. When the dust settled, the Zorithian leader lay. Defeated, his empire crumbling around him as the last remnants of the Zorithians were rounded up. Elena felt a profound sense of closure. The nightmare that had haunted countless species for millennia was finally over. Justice had been served, not through revenge, but through unity. Back on Elysium 7, celebrations erupted once more. Fires burned brightly under starlit skies as music filled the air. People danced, laughed, and shared stories of survival and triumph. Among them stood Elena, gazing upward at the constellations twinkling above. She thought about how far they'd come from a small, isolated colony facing certain doom to a beacon of hope for the galaxy. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness, not because of strength or power, but because of resilience, compassion, and the willingness to stand up for what was right. Beside her, the Deathworlder leader joined her gaze. "You've changed." "U.S.," he said quietly. "Not just your people, but mine. Perhaps redemption is possible after all." Elena smiled faintly. "Redemption starts with trust. We trusted each other, and look where it got us." As the night wore on, the bond between humans and Deathworlders grew stronger. Stories of their alliance spread across the stars, inspiring others to seek peace rather than conflict. The legend of the unstoppable Deathworlder fleet lived on, but so did the tale of a small colony that dared to defy fate. And somewhere among the stars, the SOS signal fell silent, its purpose fulfilled.